How we doing? This is Destination Denver, Colorado, and today, Aurora, Colorado's third largest city. Massive at 164 square miles, larger in fact than Denver by land mass, with a reputation to boot. Some of it earned, some of it 15 years out of date, and some of it never accurate to begin with. So today we're talking about the problem that costs people real money. The idea that two families could buy a house in Aurora, 20 minutes apart, and they could end up in completely different school districts, completely different price brackets, completely different neighborhoods when it comes to safety. Same city, same mailbox, name on it, and a completely different experience. So we're separating fact from fiction. 3 distinct Auroras. How to tell which one you're standing in, a neighborhood by neighborhood breakdown with the trade-offs included. We're going to talk about the medical campus that rebuilt the city's economy. We're going to talk about the truth behind school districts. We're going to talk about the reservoir that most transplants never find in the first place. And we're going to talk about the downsides of a town whose reputation tends to precede it. And we're starting right now. All right, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I'm your host, Jim Everest. Listen, there's 2 things we do here. One, we talk all things eating, living, breathing, experiencing the Denver Metro and Colorado Front Range. And as a licensed mortgage broker covering the entire state of Colorado, I help people like you move here each and every day. So the number and email on your screen, just know that I'm always here as a resource to you if and when you need me. Now, when we dive into Aurora, let's understand that Aurora is this idea of this one large city, when in reality, it's kind of like 3 cities in 3 counties broken up depending on the region you're talking about. You've got Arapahoe County, Douglas County, Adams County, all mixed in. So you have areas of Aurora that are going to be vastly different from others. So if you take Northwest Aurora, or basically the original city, this is where you're going to have the older home stock. These are the original neighborhoods of the town. These are the ones that sit right against the Denver line along East Colfax. This is going to be the home of the Anschutz Medical Campus and a huge Rocky Mountain Regional Medical Center for the VA that have really changed Aurora and changed the city for the better, in my humble opinion. And then you've got Central Aurora. This is the Havana Corridor. This is ranch homes. This is mature trees. This is mid-century bones. Havana Street quietly also has some of the best eats that you're going to find anywhere, as we'll get into, where you can find Korean, Ethiopian, Mexican, Vietnamese, all within a few miles. And it's also an area where more than 1/3 of Aurora residents were born outside of the United States. That's not a talking point. That's why the food is so good. And then admittedly, you've got Southeast Aurora, and that's what you're seeing on Zillow. That's where the new construction is. Golf courses, reservoirs, good schools overall rated. This is what is also considered one of the safer areas in all of Denver, statistically speaking. So when somebody tells you that Aurora is dangerous, or Aurora is cheap, or Aurora has great schools, your first question should be, which Aurora are we talking about? Because every single one of those statements is true in a certain pocket, false in another. So the first thing I want to do is put Aurora's reputation on screen right off the bat, because as I mentioned in the beginning, there are a lot of things about Aurora and reputations that have been earned over a long period of time, and some that are just completely either outdated or false. So first is, again, that Aurora is a Denver suburb, and that's really fiction. We're talking about a massive city, 400,000 people. We already talked about its size. It's got its own police department. It's got its own mayor. It's got its own water. It borders Denver. It's not a suburb. I am occasionally going to make the mistake of blurting out the term suburb. It really is not. It is its own city. The second reputation of Aurora is that it's dangerous, that crime is high. And the answer on this is, it really depends on where you're looking. So straight from Aurora's PD in 2025, their annual report, major crimes were down 23.4% in a single year in Aurora. Motor vehicle theft was down 43%, robbery was down 34%, burglary down 31%, non-fatal shootings cut in half. Now that was the 3rd straight year of declines, and over the same period of time, statistically, arrests went up. Now, before I give Aurora a huge pat on the back, and before I tell you, just get out with your friends and family and don't worry about your surroundings, Aurora statistically is still above the Colorado average, and it's above the national average when it comes to crime. Both of those are true at the same time. There has been massive improvement in the crime statistics in Aurora, as well as Denver, neighboring city, but overall still higher than the national average and still higher than Colorado's average. And I mean, statistically speaking, it's going to depend on the region you're talking about. So statistically, if you're in Northwest Aurora, you run roughly 3 times a higher rate of dealing with crime than you might if you're in Southeast Aurora. Same city, same police department. And so when people talk about, is Aurora safe? It really depends on where. Now, this is something that I'm going to say, and this is more life experience than anything else. That is not to say that if you go to a part of Aurora, you are certainly in danger. And that's not to say, as I mentioned earlier, that if you go to a part of Aurora or anywhere that statistically is safe, you shouldn't be aware of your surroundings. Things happen everywhere. I live in a great neighborhood in Lakewood, Colorado. I still keep my eyes out. Another thing we have to talk about, because it comes up so often in conversation, was a story that circulated back in 2024 that a gang took over an apartment building in Aurora. If you've ever seen the movie New Jack City, that was what everybody talked about for a while here. And here was the bottom line truth of it. First and foremost, 2 different Aurora police chiefs said on the record that no gang ever took over anything. The city's own statement said the problem was confined to specific properties. Second, real crime absolutely happened at one of these apartment complexes. There was a killing, there was an armed robbery, an armed kidnapping, there was arrests, there was federal charges. That was real, that was not fabricated. That crime or crimes occurred. But the city did not sue any tenants. They didn't go after anybody in the building. They went after the landlord, and they had been documenting on this landlord rats, sewage backups, no electricity to the property since April of 2021. This was more than a year before any Venezuelan gang so-called stories came to the country. This was a landlord issue. So as of now, this building has been boarded up for a year. The neighborhood has actually picked it up. A nonprofit picked it up. These are the same people in 2024 who spent money defending the tenants of the building, and they are now working to improve it. It's wild that that is one of the biggest stories about Aurora here, basically 2 years later, but it really is. And then another fact of fiction about Aurora is that it's cheap. And now there are plenty of areas of Aurora that are good entry points, whether you're coming here to rent, you're coming here to buy, some great areas. And no, not because they're run down, not because they're dangerous, none of that nature. It just depends on what area and really what is going on in that area. So Northwest Aurora, Southeast Aurora, these are not even close to being the same market. I want to be clear on that. And this is mainly because you have, older homes, you've got a bit more cluster in the Northwest section. And really, as you get into North and Central Aurora, you get to Southeast Aurora that we're going to go in more depth on. There's a ton of new construction. There's a lot of thought out amenities. It's really a planned community. Your price points, whether you're buying or renting, are going to be different down there. And as I mentioned earlier, and this is one of the facets of Aurora that can be very interesting for people, when we talk about diversity in communities around Denver, Aurora is going to be at the top of the list. Nearly a third of the residents of Aurora were born outside of the United States. That's part of the reason why Havana Street has some of the best food you will find anywhere in Colorado, let alone Denver. And that's one of the big draws, I'll tell you right now, of why I get out to Aurora all the time, is because I dig me some good food. Now, if we're thinking about Aurora, let's talk about some of the neighborhoods of this, again, massive, massive city, and really talk about what drives people here and being aware of some of the nuances of these communities. Now, one of the first things I'm going to mention to you about Aurora, just from a financial standpoint, especially if you're thinking of buying, is the fact that certain communities within Aurora, especially those that are in new construction, we start talking about the Southeast Highlands, we start talking about the Highlands, the Aurora Highlands, a lot of these are going to be in different tax brackets. They're going to be part of a separate tax authority that can stack extra dollars on top of your tax money. So as you're looking at homes in Aurora, especially those involved with new construction, just be aware the property taxes on those might be higher. So I'm going to lead with Southeast Aurora because it is the fastest growing area of Aurora, tons of new construction, and really a community that has just blown up over the last handful of years. So this is going to include areas like Saddle Rock. This is Cherry Creek School Districts, and this has been built around this city-owned golf course. It's 10 minutes from Southlands, which is this big walking mall there in Aurora. And this is really for families who want schools and they want the space. And the downside here is a bit simple. You are a long way from downtown Denver, and that's going to be kind of a reoccurring theme as we talk about Southeast Aurora, is that you are a ways out of the city. You will feel kind of out on an island. I won't lie, coming from Lakewood, I'm about 15 minutes from downtown, and if I have to drive over to Southeast Aurora, odds are it's going to take me close to an hour to get there. Another great neighborhood in this area is Talon's Reach. Again, Cherry Creek School Districts. And this is consistently ranked among the safest neighborhoods in the entire metro. So for families that are trading distance for quiet, they're really going to look to this area. And you're going to look at neighboring neighborhoods such as Beacon Point. This is about 875 homes, most of them built between 2005 and 2017. And these are sitting right against the Aurora Reservoir that we'll talk about here in a little bit, and a ton of trail connections. And so this is really popular. A lot of these communities popular for the outdoor space, these trails. You're also going to have pretty decent access to get up to the airport, because most of these communities are right along E470, and you can take 470 right up into the airport. And then a couple more that I would mention is South Shore, which was again the Southlands Mall and South Shore right there. And this is going to have some premium pricing. I mean, they've got a great clubhouse there, very quick access to the Aurora Reservoir. And then you've got Copperleaf. This is newer, it's denser, it's a bit more attainable. And this is really an area that people look for that entry into Cherry Creek schools. You're going to hear Cherry Creek schools a lot when it comes to Aurora. And that's one of those things that people will look to Aurora, hearing about Cherry Creek schools. And then there's a whole lot of Aurora that is not serviced by Cherry Creek. Then we get up into Central Aurora. This is where you're going to have Village East and Mission Viejo. These are mid-century ranch homes. They got mature trees, which is actually rare for a city that transplants, expect, or there's more trees than people expect. For value buyers who would, rather have, a bigger lot, shade from trees, and really neighborhoods that have, just been around for a long time, the Central Aurora area tends to be very popular. This is also home to Heather Gardens, which is a large community in general. It is also home to a 55+ community of condos, townhomes, a golf course, a social calendar that a lot of people underestimate. So Heather Gardens will be very popular for that. The downside of that specific region of Heather Gardens will be that age restriction. The fact that you have to be 55 and up, and also the fact that the HOA there gets pretty significant. And I also want to mention Murphy Creek. So Murphy Creek is one that you want to pay attention to. It's a golf course community. It's master planned. It is new construction. It's highly rated as far as its neighborhood schools. And it also sits along 4 separate metro districts, each one with its own dues. So it can get pretty pricey being in that area. This is really the exact neighborhood where a relocating family looks at a nice new house with an Aurora address, kind of assumes Cherry Creek, and it is not. So don't make that assumption. And then finally, you have Northwest Aurora. And this is, again, the original Aurora and Fitzsimmons. This is Aurora Public Schools. This is genuinely the oldest housing in the city. And this is also where you're going to tend to get the lowest price per square foot. You're going to get value for the area. And this is prime location for people who are going to be working at Anschutz. They're going to be working at the Rocky Mountain Medical Center for the VA. They want to be able to walk over. This is a large area for investors, and really anybody who are willing to trade, the older, more established community for the new and shiny. And statistically, this is also where the majority of Aurora's crime resides, statistically speaking. So as you're looking in these pockets, that is something you want to be aware of, and it's certainly something that gets brought up often in conversation. And we have to mention the airport corridor. So this is along E470 and 225, it's 225 that runs out to some of these communities, but E470 out towards South Shore and up to the Highlands. So there you have the Aurora Highlands and Painted Prairie. These are new construction, brand new, roughly 20 minutes from the airport, covered by Aurora Public Schools. This is an extremely popular area for a lot of folks, but especially pilots, flight crews, anybody whose job involves DIA. The downside to it is that you are in eastern Colorado. I mean, you're going to feel a little Kansas-y out there. This is where John Denver's full of shit, man. I mean, it's pretty flat. You're not going to have a lot of mature trees. There's not a lot that has grown out there, yet these are all new communities. You're going to get hit with some metro district taxes. So good and bad there, but again, that really quick access to the airport. And you're going to notice already that we talked about, hey, here's some areas where Cherry Creek school districts are in. Here's some areas where Aurora Public Schools are in. And I'll tell you the same thing about schools that I tell people about crime. You can't just assume that because you see that an area is covered by a certain school district that all the schools are great or that all the schools are bad necessarily. You're going to want to do your due diligence as far as the individual school goes. Again, I use myself as an example. We live in an area where overall the school districts weren't rated the best, but there are plenty of fantastic options for our kiddo. So first you had Fitzsimmons Army Medical Hospital closing, and what that was replaced with was the largest academic health center in the Rocky Mountain region. You have the CU Anschutz Medical Campus, plus the UC Health University of Colorado Hospital and Children's Hospital there in Aurora. This was a massive get. You have two nationally ranked hospitals treating more than 2 million patients a year. So when you talk about also the future of Northwest Aurora, this is a big deal for that. The university puts the campus statewide economy impact at roughly $8.5 billion a year that's driven by these hospitals. So if you work in medicine, you work in research, you work in biotech, that campus alone is a reason to look at being in Aurora. And on that same old Army base, there is a building that I know very well, and that is the Rocky Mountain Regional VA Medical Center. This is 12 buildings, 31 acres, opened in 2018. Now, it was supposed to cost a few $100 million, to be clear. It ended up costing roughly $1.73 billion. You know, Congress was happy. They stripped the VA of the authority to manage its own major construction projects, and they handed it to the Army Corps of Engineers, and now we have this phenomenal medical center. So that has really been, again, a big plus for Aurora overall. And I will tell you, as I said, the budget for this project went way over. Maybe the construction of it was an embarrassment, but I mean, my treatment there, my experiences, and those of my veteran buddies who go there, they have been pretty pleased. Now, again, it's a VA hospital. It's a hospital in general. People are going to have their pros and cons, but overall, it has been very positive in my experience and those that I've heard. I also want to touch on a couple fun amenities of Aurora, and that is the Aurora Reservoir and Cherry Creek Reservoir. So you got Cherry Creek Reservoir, which is just outside of Denver, just inside of Aurora. Pretty decent sized waters. There's not a lot of water in the Denver metro area, so Cherry Creek provides that. It allows gas motors, it allows ski boats, wakeboards, chop, and then out in the Southlands, out in South Shore, that region, you've got the Aurora Reservoir. And this does not allow electric motors. There's no gas ever. The water stays flat. It's fantastic for paddleboarding. It's a place that I really enjoy going with my family. I like taking my daughter out there. You know, there's a little beach. She can get out in the water. She can get out on a paddleboard. You know, we can get a little kayaking. She really enjoys that. Now, I'll say it does get packed in the summertime as you would expect, but again, certainly a place you're going to want to check out. So there's a couple, you know, quote unquote truth bombs that I want to make sure that we are clear on. As I've mentioned, Aurora is not a school district, that there are at least 4 different school districts operating inside Aurora City. So most of the city is Aurora Public Schools. You've got the original district with more than 160 languages spoken inside of it, if that gives you any indication of how vast it is. And then you've got much of Southeast Aurora that's going to be covered by Cherry Creek School District, and then you've got a handful of Aurora neighborhoods that are in neither one. They're zoned for Brighton, they're zoned for Douglas County. They can be covered by a couple different districts there. And that again is one of the single biggest mistakes that I see people make is they move out there assuming one thing about a school district, about a metro district, you name it, not being sure, and then they're stuck. Some of the quick, honest trade-offs to being in Aurora. Listen, if you're in central Aurora to downtown, it can run roughly 25 to 45 minutes depending on I-225 and I-70 traffic. If you're going from southeast Aurora in real traffic, it's even worse, so plan accordingly there. You've got some light rail options in Aurora that can be very helpful, but again, plan on some traffic. Also know that Aurora, as much of the Denver metro is, it's built for a car. You are going to need a vehicle. And also know that the airport location cuts both ways to an extent. If you need to go to the airport all the time, you fly for a living, going to be beneficial. If you're out there and you don't, at a certain point, you got a lot of planes flying over you. So if you don't fly, it's really just wind and a prairie out there. There's not a lot going on that feels like Colorado. So overall, I mean, listen, Aurora's for everybody. It's for different walks of life. What I tend to find of the people that I talk to is it's great for the veteran community, it's great for active military, it's great for people working in healthcare, research, biotech, people flying out at DIA, people who are chasing Cherry Creek schools without necessarily wanting to pay a Cherry Creek village price. It's for some of our retirement community, our 55 and up plus who are looking for established communities. Heather Gardens and Heritage Eagle Bend both exist. They're both extremely popular, and it's people who are trading commute time for some square footage. They want a better price point for a house. So at the end of the day, Aurora is a city that is often described by people who have never been there, people who have read a headline, maybe people who lived there at one point and left, and certainly people who have lived in an area of Aurora that they might not enjoy as far as others. But to simply say that this 164 square mile area, that's something I have to keep repeating, how massive it is, has one single reputation, is naive at best and more likely ignorant in reality. And if you or anyone you know has questions about Aurora, that's a great time to reach out. The number and email on your screen, just know that I am always the person. Answer your calls, answer your texts, answer your emails. There, when and if you need me. In the meantime, this is Destination Denver, Colorado. I am your host, Jimmy Everett. That was Living in Aurora, Colorado, the truth behind the reputation. Till I see you next time, peace.